Hi again, Amanda here. I home educate my 4 children in the UK, and this is part 2 of a series of videos on history. My last video I talked about why it's so important to us. There's a link in the description below to that video. This video I'm just going to share first 5 ways that we tackle teaching history, or rather learning it, because I feel like I'm basically learning alongside them rather than teaching them as such. So the first thing we do is to really look at this whole sense of the big story of human history. I read aloud to them every morning from a series of books called The Story of the World. We've just finished the first volume on ancient civilizations, and we are now starting at the Middle Ages. I really rate this series. It covers every continent, and it touches on so many facets of human history that you just would never ever learn about in school, and it hangs them all together just in a really easy to understand way. I've got some other books I'm hopefully going to bring in that the children will read independently, like A Child's History of the World and The Story of Mankind. Again, those are big picture books, just trying to get the big story of history. Second thing we do is biographies. So I'm often reading a biography to them. Currently I am reading a biography of Sir Isaac Newton. I downloaded it on my Kindle and I read that over lunch. I love biographies because they bring to life a time period and a geographic region, and normally tackle social issues, human issues, psychology, politics, so much you can glean from a biography. And so just some of the biographies we have read either as a group or individually in the past year include Harriet Tubman, Freedom Train. This is really relevant right now with all that's going on in terms of race relations in America, and also here. I'm so glad that we read this book. We read about Eric Liddell, C.T. Studd, Lillian Trasher, Mary Slessor. I talked about her biography in my first video. We read biographies of William the Conqueror, of Adoniram Judson, Christopher Columbus, Archimedes, who is an ancient scientist, Shakespeare. We did a biography on him a couple of weeks ago. Some of them are really in depth, some of them are short, but again, it's still just introducing them to the characters that have shaped the human story. I created like a A4 page kind of biography reflection sheet, and so my older children, when we've finished a book, I get them just to write down, what did I find most inspiring about this person's life? What did I learn from learning about their story? In September, I'm hoping to also introduce some biographies from Plutarch. Plutarch was one of the original kind of biographers of ancient Rome and that kind of classical era. So I'm using a curriculum called Ambleside Online. It's a free one with their Plutarch. I can download that and I can read it on the Kindle, or I can read it on the tablet, and it really is some of the earliest biographical material that historians have to work with on significant people, and tackles what was really going on in terms of citizenship and the Republic and all of that. So it's going to be quite heavy, but I'm really looking forward to just getting started with Plutarch as ancient biographies in September. So Plutarch's really heavy, but we're going to try. That makes me sound like such a geek, but I was at school, I would have loved it. Third thing I do to help with history is my older 2 have something called a book of centuries. This is very much part of a Charlotte Mason idea, is that you don't just learn independent facts about history, but you begin to bring it all together. Okay, so this is one of my daughter's book of centuries. I downloaded this one free from a website called homeschoolhere.net, and I printed it and bound it. So on one side, it's got each year in that century, and then on the other side is just a place where they can write notes. So whenever we do our history reading in the morning, or maybe we're doing something in science, or we go out to a museum, or anything at all where they learn something about someone or something that took place, they go and make a note of it, and they start to see what was happening in that century. So in this one, which is 300 to 201 BC, we have, my daughter's written here, that Eratosthenes measures the circumference of the earth with good accuracy. We've got the Punic Wars between the Romans and I don't know how to use the people from Carthage, basically. And then we've got 3 major events about what was happening in China. So they start to build up each century a picture of what's going on. Okay, so the 4th thing, all my children have some different books that they have to work through and then give me a narration on. It's either oral or written, depending on their age. And they all have a history book that they're working through at any given time. So some of the books that we have used or are going to use include the story of the Romans, the story of the Greeks, this country of ours. My younger daughter is reading This Country of Ours at the moment. This is the story of America. It's written by H.E. Marshall, the same person who wrote Our Island Story, the story of Great Britain. That's really interesting because where we're up to right now is the founding of the colony from Great Britain to America. We'll also do books like, I've got a book lined up for them, which is the history of English literature for boys and girls. I mean, for me, that's like gold dust, isn't it? Literature and history put together. So what they have to do is read a chapter of that book that's been assigned to them each week, and then they have to tell me what's happened or they have to write it down. So my 7-year-old recently read this book, The Apple and the Arrow. This is the story of the legend of William Tell, who really was part of the birth of Switzerland in the Middle Ages. It's a Newbery Honour Medal book, and it just told the story beautifully with some pictures as well as some text. So we read that book together, and then he told me what was happening at the end of each chapter. When they get a little bit older, I've got some other books lined up for them just as in terms of individual history. So I've got this one called Longitude. This is the true story of a lone genius who solved the greatest scientific problem of his time. This is called a living history book, where it's not just telling you what happened, but it's bringing it to life through a story. This is going to be geography and history together, as well as some politics actually, so that'll be a good one. This book is the really accessible history of philosophy that I'll get my older daughter to read probably when she's in about year 7 or 8. Okay, and the 5th way is films and documentaries. So I really enjoy a good movie, and especially one that's based on a true story. So some of the films that we have watched with our children have been Hidden Figures, Darkest Hour, a really good movie called Belle. Again, it was tackling the development of racial issues in the UK. So we watched a documentary called Victoria and Albert about them and their wedding, and one of my daughters absolutely loved that documentary. So there's really good films out there that you can utilise as well. Okay, so that's the first 5 ways that we are learning history. I hope that's helped you. I just hope that's given you some good ideas. If you've got some really good books or ideas on how you teach history to your kids, or that you just think would be really good, please share them in the comments with me. Thanks for listening.